Is New York Republican Congresswoman and also member of the House Ways and Means Committee, Nicole Malliotakis. Congresswoman, it is so great to have you here. When I see that speech, that was such an angry, divisive President Biden. It was astounding. What was your reaction? You were there.
Well, I mean, this was the gaslighting of the union, not the state of the union. For the president to stand there and try to blame Republicans for his failed border policies. And I always take the opportunity to tell the world about what's actually happening here. He has the authorities, right, under the Immigration and Nationality Act, sections 1182 and 1225. Under those two sections, he can actually adjust parole, adjust asylum. He can shut down the border completely. He could reinstate remain in Mexico. He could end catch and release. Sadly, he used the discretion that he has under that law to totally dismantle the border, to do the exact opposite. And that is why when he was walking down the aisle, entering the chamber, I stopped him and said, he needs to secure the border because Americans are dying, and he has to use the same authority he used to dismantle it. He can put it back together, and he should do so.
But he did not, and that's what was amazing. Here was this opportunity, and I'm glad that you spoke out to, Congresswoman. It is amazing that after all of this, he didn't even do an executive order. He didn't even do the fundamentals. He didn't even express any new initiatives. All he did was blame Republicans.
Because this is exactly what he wants. He knows it's very unpopular with the American people, so he's got to try to point fingers. But they're doing this by design. They've allowed 10 million people in. They're allowing the drug cartels to be enriched because every person is paying thousands of dollars. In fact, that was probably the only honest statement we heard regarding the border, is when he said each person who's coming over the border is paying the cartels $8,000. But he is incentivizing it. And let's be clear, Laken Riley would be alive today if our president did not change parole and give that individual parole to enter our country, and if Bill de Blasio didn't change the sanctuary laws in New York in 2014. That tied the hands of the NYPD, prohibited individuals who commit crimes from being deported. It's those two individuals, right? These are the Democratic policies of the local governments and the federal government. That's the reason why Laken Riley is not alive today.
And you and Congressman Anthony D'Esposito had two very special guests at the State of the Union, Congresswoman. The two officers who were brutally beat up by migrants in Times Square just a few weeks ago. What was it like for them to be there and be presented to the American people and to see what President Biden was saying that day?
Oh, I think they had a great time. They really enjoyed the opportunity to come and see the Capitol. We gave them a private tour of the Capitol. They did some sightseeing, but also got to hear the president. And I think the interesting thing is, here's a situation again where our law enforcement were attacked by individuals that Joe Biden allowed into the country. Again, he gave them the parole. That's the rule that he changed on his own, using that authority that he says he supposedly doesn't have. We did it to do two things. One, to show appreciation for our NYPD. They have a difficult job, difficult circumstances. They don't get a lot of appreciation from the local Democrat elected officials in this city. Quite frankly, their jobs are being made harder every day by the Democratic policies at the city, state, and federal level, whether it's bail reform, whether it's a sanctuary policy, whether it's stripping their qualified immunity protections, or, of course, our president allowing criminals to enter into our country. And the second thing was to highlight that how Joe Biden's failed border policies is affecting the northernmost states, right? New York, we wouldn't be in this crisis that we see right now if Joe Biden didn't use his authority to make 60-plus policy changes, undo the policies of President Trump that were working, that were stemming the flow. We've never had any crisis like this in New York City under any other president, Republican or Democrat.
Are you surprised that as we're talking of all of the things that are happening as you're bringing up to New York City, which you understand all too well, of the issues with crime, border, everything, here was his moment. And then when it came time to the moment about Laken Riley, he called her Lincoln Riley. By the way, let me just play this because here it is. He was basically forced into it by Marjorie Taylor Greene, who gave him the button, and then he holds up the button. But here he is saying it, and everybody was just shaking their heads.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
You know, it was interesting, that follow-up where he says, yeah, there were thousands killed by legals. In other words, he's minimizing the death of who he said was Lincoln Riley. Obviously, it's Laken Riley. It just seems so out of touch.
Well, I mean, look, it's right. We have to deal with our own criminals here in the country, but we shouldn't be accepting criminals from other countries, and that's what the problem is. There's no vetting at our southern border. They're allowing people to pay the drug cartels thousands of dollars to be smuggled here. Fentanyl is streaming over our border, killing 100,000 Americans annually. We've seen just the other day another law enforcement officer killed in Washington state by someone who is in the country illegally. And this is happening all too often and is a direct result of these broken open border policies. And when given the opportunity to fix it, the Democrats don't do it. The city council refuses to make changes to the sanctuary law to deport criminals. Just the other day, we passed the Laken Riley Act. And guess what? Only 37 Democrats voted for it. Only 37 Democrats actually voted for that bill that would actually just say if you commit a crime, right, you have to be deported. You have to cooperate. These local municipalities like New York have to cooperate. But you're right. The president is out of touch. And that is why he said the State of the Union is strong at a time when 3 out of 4 Americans are saying that we're headed in the wrong direction. Anti-energy policies are the reason why we're seeing high inflation, high food and energy costs. His policies at the border are the reason why we're seeing this illegal immigration crisis. His weakness on the international stage is why we've seen these horrible wars breaking out. Remember, we had peace through strength under President Trump. We had the lowest unemployment rate in decades. We had people being lifted wages. We had families lifted out of poverty because he doubled the child tax credit.
Yeah, by the way, as you're saying, there are so many things, Congresswoman. You are so right. Unfortunately, we got to move on. But we are so glad to have you here. It's always terrific to have you here, Congressman Malliotakis. Thank you.
Great to be with you, Rita. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep